Okay, it's Sunday, which means against my better judgment, it's time to go to Reddit and see what we can find in this hive of scum and villainy. So I've been to the Overwatch University subreddit ahead of time and just scraped all the questions off the first couple pages, and we're going to answer them now while some footage of Dragon Ball FighterZ plays in the background, because it's a better game than Overwatch is. And if you're wondering which side I'm on, just look for whichever side started with Android 21. So first up, if Sigma's ult damage does half the HP of the target, does this mean it can one-shot with damage boost? No, because the part that does half the health and damage doesn't scale off of damage boost. It's just half their health, flat. The lift just does a flat amount of damage. I think it does 50 damage. It's not a lot, but that part scales off of damage boost. But the slam is what does half the health, and that doesn't scale off of damage boosts, unfortunately. As fun as it would be to just kill everybody that you hit with your ultimate, that might be a little strong, just like a little bit on this too strong side. And yes, Ana players, please stop nano boosting me when I use my ultimate as Sigma. It doesn't work. It doesn't work at all, actually. It's a very poor use of company resources. But I swear, like every game I play with Ana, she nano boosts me when I use my ultimate, and I am a sad, sad boy. So, very simple, but no, that doesn't scale. So next up, is D.Va dead in this 2-2-2 meta? So it's not really the fact it's 2-2-2 that's D.Va's problem, it's the heroes that are currently popular are D.Va's problem. Which basically means there's a lot of beam heroes out there right now, isn't there? Symmetra's pretty good. I'm sure you've all noticed. Symmetra's pretty good. Mei is also pretty good right now. And it can be hard to find stuff to do as D.Va versus a bunker comp unless people are, like, doing ridiculous things. So, and especially with, like, you know, we got 2 shields over there getting in the way now as well. Double the bunker, double the fun. So, it's hard for her just because of these heroes being popular, pretty much. Mostly Symmetra and Mei. I don't think it's impossible. I don't think D.Va's dead. I think that's a bit of hyperbole, but she is much more niche than she was previously, which I'm also fine with, because up until a couple weeks ago, D.Va was, like, very strong, like, easily, if not the strongest tank, definitely, like, one of the top 3, right? Like, so I'm fine with it, because D.Va can be quite not fun to play against sometimes, so I'm okay with it, personally, but yeah, she's much more niche now. She's still good at doing things that she was good at doing before, like she's still good at killing snipers, she's still good at killing people that are out of position, she still has a good zoning ultimate, defense matrix is still really good. Well, but isn't Sigma's absorb basically defense matrix? Ah, you might be tempted to think that, straw man, but you see, Sigma's absorb is literally right in front of him, whereas defense matrix goes about 1,000 miles in front of you, making it significantly easier to eat ultimates with self-destruct than it is with Sigma's ult. Also because absorb is a cooldown, whereas defense matrix is resource-based. Makes it much more accessible. I'm pointing this out because people, there were a lot of things I found this week that were like, absorb's overpowered, it's just like defense matrix, except it gives you shields at the end, so it's better. It is not better than defense matrix at what it does at all. First off, half the time you don't even get the goddamn shield, because you need to actually finish the full channel on absorb to actually get the shield, and there tend to be quite a few people around that can crowd control you out of it before that happens. Secondarily, the hitbox is fucking tiny, okay? It's tiny. It's got like a 12-second cooldown. It's not as good at as defense matrix in terms of like defensive abilities. And anybody that says says it's as good as defense matrix is extremely wrong. Do not trust that person and their lies. So that was a little bit of a tangent, but I thought it was important to point out because there was legitimately like 5 things I looked at where in part of the block text it was like, absorb is insane. I've got a really fun one later about Sigma. Oh, I loved this guy. So anyway, D.Va's not dead, no, she's just much more niche than she was previously, so use with care, basically. So next up is, how do I counter a Symmetra? So the flippant but true answer is don't let her get to level 3 damage. Try and keep her at level 1 damage, then she loses to a fuck lot more things. But that's not always your call, right? Like, if there's a Reinhardt on your team that's just gonna stand there holding his shield up in front of the Symmetra, giving her free ult charge, you know, life is hard sometimes like that. So, you know, can't do much about that one. So, one of the easiest things to do is always just going to be crowd control Symmetra, because she can't do shit if you one-shot her while she can't move. So, like, Roadhog, McCree, Mei, if you, like, get the chance to actually freeze her, right? Like, McCree and Roadhog are the big ones, having the easiest access to crowd control, and the ability to actually, like, one-shot her before she comes out of it. Other than that, you can outrange the Symmetra by just playing one of like the long-range DPS. This will be hard if they're playing like Sigma Orisa and the Symmetra isn't like going out away from the team, right? So that might be harder, but if she can't get to you, she can't really do much. At that point, she's just hoping you get hit by an orb and something else at the same time to kill you, so outranging her is a good one. Pharah is also a good one to pick against her, because she can't do shit to a Pharah, dude. Like, you just fly above that Symmetra and make her sad, you know? That's always fun. You might not be able to pick some Pharah, depending on, like, what the enemy team is doing as well, you know? But she can't do shit to Pharah. Winston isn't as good as people say he is. Winston can fight Symmetra, sure, but people kind of treat it like, you just pick Winston, it's a hard counter to Symmetra. This is not the case. It hasn't been the case ever since her turret stopped being 1 health, basically. But, you know, he can still fight the Symmetra, sure enough. The problem is, if you jump on Symmetra while she's, like, level 3, then she's just gonna plow through your shield in, like, no time at all, and then you're just fighting Symmetra as Winston, so if she's got any kind of assistance at all, you're pretty much not going to kill her as Winston, but you can maybe make her life difficult, and he is still okay at clearing out her turrets quickly as well, so that's also nice, but he's not as good against Symmetra as people say he is, though he is also still fine. But those are pretty much your options, really. Crowd control is going to be the easiest way to counter her, basically always. Other than that, outranging, pretty much, or using crowd control. I think I just said use crowd control twice, but yeah, you get the idea. Crowd control is really good. It's really good at controlling these, like, annoying close-range heroes. So, there you go. That's basically it. So next off, this is the one I was excited for. DPS can't punish Sigma, and the guy listed, like, all the categories of heroes in the game, and talked about how they couldn't do shit to Sigma. And Sombra got her own category, and he was like, the guy thinks that Sigma doesn't give a shit about getting hacked. Which is extremely wrong. He's like, hack does nothing to Sigma, except, you know, disable his ability to move his shield. He can't use Absorb, and he can't use Accretion, but, you know, that's fine. He's okay with getting hacked, no big deal. It's not like tanks need access to their cooldowns to really do stuff or anything. So that was cool. And basically he had every category that he said was useless against Sigma was like a couple of lines in length, but could be basically summed up as... He could have basically summed up the whole thing as, I think Absorb is mad OP. Like, he was very upset that Sigma has Absorb as an ability. And you know, it's not really that good. That's like his worst button. It's not very good. But this guy was very angry. And the issue this guy seemed to be having more than anything else was people are bad at shooting barriers, because he was talking like Sigma's barrier has infinite health and he can just freely move it to fuck with him specifically. So, you know, a fairly classic thing as far as Overwatch University goes with, you know, the crying situation. Anyway, so DPS can indeed punish Sigma, counter to popular belief, apparently. Sigma doesn't like any of the heroes that are, like, real aggressive. He's like Orisa in that, like, once people are right on top of him, he's not having a very good time. And he doesn't even have the benefit of, like, being able to hide behind Fortify to, like, keep him alive, which Orisa does have, though he can still shield dance. So, and all the aggressive heroes are, like, good against Sigma. All of the barrier-breaking heroes are good against Sigma. He said the Shield Buster heroes weren't good because Absorb hard counters people like Junkrat, apparently oblivious to the fact Absorb has a 10-second plus cooldown, and it doesn't last very long. But, you know, disregarding that. So they're really good. Like, Sigma's shield isn't as healthy as you might think it is, as long as it's getting, you know, focused, which is sometimes an issue, depending on what's going on, right? Your team Muscle Knight might not be good at breaking barriers overall, but nah, Sigma hates aggressive heroes, dude. And he hates heroes that have got beams for the exact same reason that D.Va hates beams. Defense Matrix and Absorb just does nothing against Zarya and Mei and Symmetra. Sigma has the benefit of being long enough range and having a shield, so he fares better than D.Va against these heroes, but still hates it. The worst thing in the world that can happen to you with Sigma is an Zarya with high charge is running straight at you. That is the worst thing you can possibly see as Sigma, because she is gonna fuck you up, dude. You can barrier dance as much as you want, but as soon as she, like, gets you, she got you. Mei and Symmetra will also fuck you up, so, you know, I get Zarya's not a DPS. Technically. But, you know, so yes, DPS can indeed punish Sigma, especially if the Sigma's doing dumb shit. Like, Sigmas are bad at playing bad at shield management almost entirely across the board. They think they're playing Orisa, so they don't worry about, like, about actually conserving their shield's charge. They let it break, they, like, go in position too aggressively, and then it makes it easier for the close-range heroes to get on top of him. Like, a Reaper coming at you is also very scary unless your teammates are nearby to help you, you know, things like that. So, yes, DPS can indeed counter Sigma, is the moral of the story. You've just... I don't want to be too insulting, but you've just got to know exactly what you're doing, you know? Not exactly what you do, you just got to know what you're doing, right? Like, you can't pick Soldier, run up to Sigma, like, run through Sigma's shield, and then just start, like, plowing into him, and then hoping he dies, right? You can't do that. You've got to be a little bit more cautious about it, especially since there's a strong likelihood you're looking at a bunker comp where you can't just freely run in and fuck these people up, but... yeah, he can in fact be punished by DPS. Just don't do stupid shit, dude. That's the moral of the story. Just don't do stupid shit, and you will get the Sigma. Don't just stand there, like, plinking away at him. Just don't stand there, like, perfectly still plinking away at him while he's just throwing his orbs at you, because, and, like, it's kind of hard to hit somebody if they're, like, moving around, you know? Don't, like, be predictable. Dodge some shit. Vary up your movement a little bit so he has a harder time tracking you. Stuff like that. Bait out Absorb before you use your really important ability, right? Like, same thing you'd be doing if you were playing against, like, a D.Va or a Genji, right? You're trying to bait out their cooldown that's gonna fuck you up so that you don't, like, it doesn't eat, like, your flashbang or anything, right? Same deal with Sigma. If you're shooting into him and you're playing like Soldier, wait until he uses Absorb before you use Helix Rocket. And, you know, that will make it easier. Stuff like that. So, yeah. I just wanted to make fun of this guy because he thinks that Sigma is okay, just perfectly fine with getting hacked by fucking Sombra. He definitely isn't. Very few people are, like, completely fine with getting hacked, and Sigma is definitely not one of them. None of the tanks are, really. Zarya, I guess, doesn't care that much, because if she's already used, like, her bubbles, she's not that bothered. So, like, I guess Zarya might not matter, but, like, no tank likes getting hacked, dude. It's like a universal feature of the class. So, there you go. I was trying to make fun of the guy, to be honest with you. Next up, which hero is good to start with as a new player? You know, you want a hero that's, like, gonna teach you the fundamentals of the game. and is easy to play, or decently easy to play, or something like that. And you don't want any of the weird heroes to be like the first one you play as, right? Because I internalized this as like something somebody said about Street Fighter once, right? This was a guy that teaches people, like coaches people how to play Street Fighter. And he said, you know, when I'm mentoring someone, I always tell them to start playing as Ryu first. It doesn't really matter who they want to play, I make them play Ryu first, because Ryu is the character that the game is built entirely around, right? Like, he is at the absolute core of it. So, and Ryu as a character is all about fundamentals, and he's a good hero to start, or a good character to start with, because he'll teach you the fundamentals. And you don't want to play any of the weird characters, because then you learn the game through a strange lens that can be difficult to wrap your head around while you're still learning the core fundamentals of the game, right? He said it a lot more succinctly than I did right there, but I hope you get the idea. So basically, if you're just starting the game, you want to play someone like Soldier, Ana, McCree, Orisa, not Sigma, Orisa, Batista, or like Zenyatta. Basically, one of the very boring heroes, typically hit scam. And the reason is, like, they have the most, like, universal crossover with things they're doing, right? Because all of these heroes, their positioning is important for them. They can't just completely ignore that, or for the most part ignore that, right? High ground is important. They've all got ultimates that you want to use at the correct times and places, so you can learn that as well. They all have like a decent amount of cooldown management, but they're not over the top. And their gameplay is simple, right? You're not trying to do anything weird with Soldier or McCree. You're trying to control high ground and position with your team, right? Like, that's your main goal. Same like Ana, Batista, Zenyatta, same thing. You're trying to just position well, control high ground if you can, keep your team alive. And Orisa is just like the most boring tank in the entire game. And you look at Orisa and you immediately get the idea, right? Like, you just sit there. Winston can be as well, but given that he's an aggressive hero, that might be a little off-putting for you if you're just learning the game. Because if you don't know what you're doing, and you jump in on the wrong time or on the wrong people as Winston, you're going to get fucked up. But once you're, like, slightly more familiar with, like, the cast overall, Winston is also fine. You just want someone simple that'll teach you the fundamentals of the game, which is positioning, ult economy, or ult management, I'll say, and cooldown management. Because those are the three things that connect most heroes. There are a few heroes where, like, they don't really worry about cooldown management all that much, like Widow. You don't have to worry about cooldown management outside of, like, using hook, you know, the grappling hook to move around. Roadhog would also be fine as a beginning hero, also very straightforward character. You know what you're trying to do, right? But those are pretty much the best ones to go for. I think Soldier is the best one, like, easily to go for, because he is very easy to play and has, like, everything that we just talked about. Positioning's important, ult management's important, and cooldown management is important on Soldier, so he'll kind of teach you everything. Soldier, I think, is like the Ryu of Overwatch. He is the most basic, like, fundamental hero in the entire game, as far as I'm concerned. You really don't want your first hero to be one of the weird ones. Like, you don't want your first hero to be, like, Hammond, because, boy, will you learn the game through a weird lens if your first hero you play is Hammond, or Doomfist, right? That kind of thing. So, my number one recommendation would be Soldier, but also McCree, Zenyatta, Ana, Batista, Orisa, maybe even Ashe. I might go to Ashe as well, but Ashe has like a mechanical requirement, so that might be off-putting for you as well. I mean, to be fair, McCree also has a mechanical requirement, right? But he's got a little bit more room for error at the same time. So there you go. Those are basically the best ones. Next up is, how do you make a plan? And this was kind of a teamwork-focused thing, where it was like, you know, I'm in low SR, my team ain't got a plan, I'm trying to make a plan, but I don't understand how to do it, basically. really, like, what a plan comes down to most of the time is just, like, what do we have to do to win, and what do they have to do to win? And you're trying to get to point A while avoiding what they're while avoiding their objective, right? So, if our team is something like Sigma, Orisa, Genji, Symmetra, Ana, Batista, right? Then the thing that is most likely to win us the game is Nanoblade, because we've got Genji and Ana. So, we're trying to work towards that, and there's more to that than just we're trying to build both of those ults up so that they're at 100% at the same time, right? The plan is a little bit more than that, because we then need to look at the enemy. If we've decided, like, that's our win condition, we need to look at the enemy team and go, alright, so what can they do to counter that, right? So, we look at their team and we see, oh, they've got a Zenyatta and a Batista as their support, so we need to try and get Trance out before we use the Nanoblade, because otherwise, you know, Genji might not kill these people. Nanoblade can kill people through Trance, by the way, but they won't do it if they're in low SR. They don't know what they're doing on Genji, right? So we need to bait Transcendence out first. And ideally, we also bait out the lamp, but that's not as necessary, because Genji can be killing that while hitting other people at the same time. So, we've got Sigma on our team. So, the plan becomes, have Sigma ult first, Zenyatta will use Trance, in all likelihood, Batista might use the lamp, but, again, if we're in low SR, Zenyatta's gonna get lifted, and he's gonna go Trance, so we get it out of him like that. And then once Sigma's used his ultimate, Transcendence went out, now we can use Nanoblade without fear of it getting countered. Bam. So that's like how you make a plan, basically, for what you're trying to do. You're looking at the enemy, you're looking at your team, sorry, and you're deciding, how are we going to win the game? And then you figure out how best to get to that point, and you look at the things that might fuck you up, trying to make that plan work so that you get there, so that you can get there safely. And then the other part of making a plan is looking at what their win condition is, right? So imagine, well, so they've got Zen Batista. Imagine that they've got, what do they've got? They've got Sigma, Zarya, Mei, McCree. So their win condition becomes hit people with the Graviton or the Gravitic Flux, and then combo that with Blizzard or Deadeye. So so then you need to figure out what you want to do to counter that. So for countering Blizzard, you know, Gravitic Flux and Blizzard, or Graviton, Surge, and Blizzard, you pick Zenyatta, because Transcendence just completely fucks up Blizzard, right? Like, it doesn't do anything anymore. The other defensive abilities don't have quite the same, like, guarantee of success versus Blizzard, because it's quite a long-lasting ultimate. But they've also got, it might also be one of those ultimates plus Deadeye, right? And Trance doesn't save you from Deadeye because it one-shots you through it. So we need something that can stop McCree at the same time. So we could say pick Diva, she can defense matrix it. Sigma might be able to absorb it. We could just try spreading out more so that we're less vulnerable to these big AoE ultimates. If only like one or two of us gets hit by the Graviton, then they might be able to get out of that situation, whereas if like all 6 of us get hit by it, we're fucking dead if we don't have certain abilities, right? So we can also just spread out more as well, which doesn't necessarily require any team comp adjustments. And that's basically the steps to a plan. You look at your team, how do we win? You look at their team, how do they win? And you figure out how to get to your win while avoiding their win. And that's it, basically. You know, you can maybe get a little bit more complicated than that if you want to, like, really carefully track ultimate cooldowns. You can make adjustments on the fly where you might go like, oh, we don't need to go through the step of baiting out Transcendence because I know that the Zenyatta is probably only at like half charge or something like that, you know? So you might make then the plan doesn't need to be as complicated, it can just be use Nanoblade now while Trance is down. Stuff like that. But that's basically what you do. It's not really all that complicated. It's just looking at how you can win and figuring out how to get there and, like, figuring out what can fuck you up. That's the most important part of it. And then mitigating their win condition is the other part of it. But I would consider that part less important than, like, figuring out what your win condition is and how to get to that. We get, like, can I think of another example real quick to try and help illustrate the point? Imagine their team is Orisa, Sigma, Hanzo, Widow, Bridget, and Anna, right? So their plan in that circumstance is to sit behind their shields and wait for Widow and Hanzo to get picks, right? And simultaneously, maybe wait until we can combo Gravitic Flux and Dragon Strike, and that might also work. So we need something that we can do to mitigate the snipers. Well, we can pick more barriers, right? If we run Orisa Sigma right back at them, the snipers can't get a direct line of sight to us as easily. We can play around cover more, and that doesn't necessarily require any hero switching, but is map dependent as well. We can pick divers, but that's a little scary to do because they have a Bridget as one of their supports, so rather than picking divers, we might be better off picking flankers instead, because someone like Genji can harass the snipers without getting into Bridget's range and can hopefully outplay her a little bit more. We can pick snipers as well and hope that our snipers are better, and we can try and facilitate our snipers winning that fight by doing something like picking Mercy. Because if our sniper fucks up and gets clicked on, as long as they didn't die in a ridiculous position, if we're playing Mercy, we can res the sniper and they get to try again. If we're also playing Mercy, we can damage boost our snipers, which makes them a little bit more likely to get the picks during the fight as well. So we can do that. Or we could just go full dive comp. In which case, yeah, there's a Bridget there, but if we run like full dive comp and dive straight on top of them, Bridget can't stun us all, dude. She can't stun us all. So that's something we could do there for the enemy team. Now imagine we're running... What are we running? We're running Earth Shatter. You see where I've gone with this one. We're running Reinhardt, Reinhardt D.Va, Hanzo, Soldier, and the supports kind of don't matter for this one. We'll put Anna Batista in there at the end, right? So we're playing like Deathball, essentially, or close to it. It's not really Deathball, it's, you know, we're playing a very boring average 2-2-2 comp, basically. Our win condition in that situation revolves largely entirely around Reinhardt, because we can... Dragon Strike and Tac Visor are not likely to get much work done by themselves. They need setup. So we can combo Nano Visor with, or a Tac Visor with Nano Boost, and that might get some stuff done, but depending on what the enemy team is running and where they're positioned, that might not actually work out, because Soldier does need line of sight to them. So that might not work. So now, so we're basically working off of Earth Shatter here. This is what's going to set up most of our plays, right? So what's going to fuck that one up? It's going to be the enemy team's barriers. So we can try and facilitate the Reinhardt a little bit more by trying to focus down the barriers that are in the way. If they're running like an Orisa or a Sigma, because we're running Soldier and Hanzo. So those two people are pretty good at breaking barriers. So if they are focusing the barriers actively, that can make it easier for us to get the Earth Shatter in there. We've got D.Va as our other tank, so D.Va can throw self-destruct on the other side of the team. They have to turn to acknowledge that, which makes it easier for Reinhardt to get into position and Earth Shatter. And we've got Nano Boost, so failing all else, we could Nano Boost Reinhardt and just have him run straight in there, and then we could throw the lamp on him as well, because we've also got Batista, and make it very hard for the enemy team to deal with the big German man that's running through their team. And then while they're worrying about that, Hanzo and Soldier are having a great time plinking away at the team, and maybe they've even got Amplification Matrix to help them, right? So that's, you know, the sort of thing we might try and think about doing when we've got like that kind of team comp. And So that's the general sort of thought process to try and go through while you're making a plan, basically. I hope that made sense. Yeah, I think that every time. I'm like, god damn, I get to the end of saying something and I'm like, that sounded like an absolute fucking mess. I hope somebody understood what the fuck I was saying, because I stopped understanding after a while. So next up is Baptiste the new Zenyatta? Kind of, a little bit. Having the lamp makes him comparable to Zenyatta. The thing is, Zenyatta still has stuff that Baptiste doesn't, right? Because Discord is still really good. Zenyatta synergizes with flankers way better than Batista does. Like, Batista's awful with flankers a lot of the time. And the lamp isn't as good at Transcendence in certain situations. For example, Blizzard is not stopped by the lamp. The lamp can just get broken, and Blizzard lasts too long, so that doesn't work. Whereas Transcendence will save you from that. Same Graviton, it might not save you from Graviton because you're going to have to throw it into the middle of the Graviton as well. So if they've got, like, AoE or they're paying attention, they can just focus the lamp down and then without even, like, adjusting much, whereas Trance will probably get you through the situation. Now, having said that, the lamp has advantages that Transcendence doesn't have, because Transcendence is countered by Bio Grenade, whereas the lamp is not. The lamp doesn't care if you're immune to healing at the time, so the lamp is better than Trance if, like, that kind of thing happens. Similarly, Trance can't save you from getting one shot, but the lamp can, so it can save you from things like Deadeye. So they've got pros and cons to each of them. It's not like Batista fits cleanly in where Zenyatta does, but I think it's a fair comparison. There are a lot of situations where you could run Zenyatta or Batista, in which case Batista is usually going to end up being better just because he is not as soft as Zenyatta, and Batista's got a way higher, like, general healing output than Zenyatta does. Obviously, Zen's gonna beat him if he's using Transcendence, but just generally playing the game, Batista's gonna out-heal Zen. It's also easier for Batista to be able to access the lamp because it's just his cooldown. It's not his ultimate, so that can make it more difficult for Zenyatta to have access to his emergency button. And even Amplification Matrix, like, even if you're just using it for yourself, which is the baseline assumption I usually make, like, if nothing else, you have made a copy of yourself, because everything you do is doubled through it. So, even just by itself, that'll, like, can get you through a lot of situations. So, they've got pros and cons to them. I don't think Baptiste is just a flat-out replacement to Zenyatta, because Zenyatta definitely still has his benefits over the lamp and Batista in general. But I do think it's a fair comparison. There's quite a bit of overlap between these two characters, but I don't think it's a case of one being, like, strictly better than the other. Just, there are quite a few situations where Batista is going to end up being better than Zenyatta. But then, there's cases where the reverse of that will be true also. So, there you go. I expected to talk more about that one, but that's kind of all I've got to say about it, to be honest with you. So next up is, I know that changing heroes is part of the gameplay, but is it okay to only use one hero the entire match? This is also the last question, by the way, that I've got for this week. This person actually asked, like, it was a thread that had, like, 5 or 6 questions in it, and they were all kind of along the lines of, we just watched this game, I remember that happening. There were a bunch of questions that were along the lines of, like, is it okay to only play Baptiste because I really like him? What situations do I need to consider switching in? Blah, 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 blah. There are, like, if you're not playing, like, a niche hero, right? So if you're not playing, like, Torbjorn, right? Who has niche situations, right? He's not a broadly applicable hero. Someone like Torbjorn, you need to be a little more willing to switch on. If you're playing, like, Pharah, you need to be kind of willing to switch on that character, But if you're playing really broadly useful heroes, right? Like, Batista is one of these heroes. If you're playing, like, Batista, if you're playing Ana, if you're playing Orisa, Sigma, Reinhardt, Zarya, McCree, Symmetra, Mei, like, you will be able to play these heroes, you will be able to pretty much, like, one-trick these heroes with a relative degree of certainty, because they are useful in a lot of situations. There are not many situations they are completely hard-countered by, which means you can usually get away with playing them for, like, really extended periods of time. Like, this, since Sigma came out, I've played the game for about 30 or so hours since the game came out, and I have played Sigma almost entirely that entire time. The only times I've switched off of Sigma have been somebody beat me to him, or we are in, like, the stalling phase of the game, in which case I've changed to Hammond or Diva to get out there faster and stall it out. I have also changed to Winston to counter the enemy team a couple of times, but out of those 30 hours, I've probably played like 27 hours of just Sigma, and it's fine. You will be able to do the same thing with Batista, no problem. Pretty much as long as you aren't playing like a niche hero, you're gonna be fine, right? Like, there are situations where, like, Torbjorn gets fucked. There are situations Soldier gets fucked, right? Whereas other heroes, like, they're pretty good across the board, and most situations that are, like, not good for you, you can still play around, right? Like, even if you're in a bad spot as Sigma, there's stuff you can do to play around that and avoid it. Same with, like, McCree, Batista, Anna. You know, there are situations that are not optimal for you, but there's ways to play around them. And even if you are playing a niche hero, like, dude, people have gotten to fucking top 500 playing just Torbjorn before he got reworked, right? Like, trust me, if you are good at a hero, that is kind of all that really matters. Skill with a hero is greater than all else. Like, this is why I also say you should never change to a hero that better fits the team comp, because of that, if you don't know how to play that hero. If you don't know how to play that hero, you changing to that hero will accomplish nothing for your team, because you won't be able to benefit from the reason they are good for your composition. Skill with hero is greater than all other factors. So, don't worry too much about only playing one guy throughout the round, especially if you're playing, like, someone who's very broadly useful. One of the more upper-tier heroes, we would describe them as. Then it's gonna be fine, dude. And, you know, everybody does have situations where they get, like, hard countered, right? Like, so, pretty much, like, you know, you'll know when you're getting hard countered, and that's the time to change. If it's only, like, a soft counter situation, then, you know, you can play around it. It's not the end of the world. But, like, if it's got, like, 4 heroes that can fuck you up, it might be time to change your hero at that point, but otherwise, you'll be fine, dude. You'll be fine. So I've kind of run out of things to say now, and I started this game not that long ago, so now we have to wait for it to finish before we can leave, so you're all going to have to sit here with me and listen to me fill space, which is mostly just going to be about Dragon Ball FighterZ now, basically. So, you know, I am very disappointed with Janemba, which I've said previously. He's the most recent character that came out, and I'm disappointed because he is a very bad anchor. Because my team comp is very bad, so I need a good anchor. That's why Vegeta's there. Vegeta's one of those very good guys at the back, to have in the back. The best person to have as your anchor right now is, like, undisputably Super Saiyan 1 Goku. But is there a more boring character in existence, I ask you? No, there isn't. So I pick Vegeta instead. Yamcha is also very good, surprisingly, but he's also very boring. It's funny to me how, like, the tier list kind of goes for Dragon Ball FighterZ, because Yamcha is a very good anchor, and Yamcha is probably, like, an A-tier character, but that's almost entirely because of his assist, which is a fantastic assist. It holds you, and the reason is it has a tremendous amount of block stun. So if you're a blocking Yamcha, it holds you there forever. It's like a second length stun, essentially. And if you don't block it, like, he is holding you for a long time, which makes it really easy to, like, extend combos with him and stuff like that. So his assist is really good. But Yamcha is, like, really bad. Like, it's one of those situations where if you get into a situation where, like, you're fighting with just Yamcha, you're probably gonna lose. Like, Yamcha by himself is like a C tier hero, but his assist makes him like an A tier hero. It's incredible. This is not unusual for this kind of game. So I remember in Marvel vs. Capcom 2, I think. It was one of the Marvel vs. Capcoms. Might have been 3. But it was like Doom, not Doom. Magneto is really good. It might have actually been Doom. No, it was Magneto, I'm pretty sure. It was, if you got to Magneto, you probably lost. But if everything went according to plan, Magneto hard carried you through his assist. I think it was Magneto. I've got Doom in my head for some reason, but I'm pretty sure it was Magneto. It was such a long time ago. Man, sure is a shame Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite didn't work out, isn't it? And if you need to know why it didn't, if you don't know why Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite didn't work out, just Google Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, Ryu, or Chun-Li's face, and you'll figure it out. You'll figure it out. Turns out what they did when they made Marvel, it was a big tangent here, but it's an interesting story. Turns out what they did with Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite is we don't know exactly how much budget the game had for production, but we know it was comparable to a single season of DLC for Street Fighter V, which is like 6 characters. They had the same amount of money as a pack of DLC to make an entire game with, which is not a lot. So, what they did was apparently they took the models from Marvel vs. Capcom 3 and then just put them in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. And they had to upscale them, obviously, and Marvel vs. Capcom 3 had a very different art style. It was cel-shaded comic book style, whereas Infinite went for a more realistic style graphics. So, it didn't exactly work very well, and you can tell when you look at, like, Dante, Chun-Li, who they did eventually fix, to be fair, and Ryu, like, they look really fucked up, and it's because they were cel-shaded comic characters that got up-resed. This is also why the newer characters notably looked better. Like, Ultron is in the game. He was not in Marvel vs. Capcom 3, and Ultron looks fantastic. Right? The characters that they had to make for Infinite look a lot better than the other characters, or the returning characters, because they got upscaled from Marvel vs. Capcom 3. So, because they had no fucking money. And, yeah, that's what happened with Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. It was very sad, and it was very upsetting. Tragic. Anyway, so, thank you very much for watching if you did. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm more than happy to answer. If you haven't already, you can join our Discord and ask questions more directly and have a conversation about them, or just shitpost with us. I've started streaming on Twitch Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 8 PM EST till midnight EST. There's a link to the channel in the description. And if you managed to make it all the way through the video and somehow still enjoyed it, please like the video and subscribe for more content of middling quality in the future. And I hope you found the video helpful.